you've lost, even before you see the attacker. While on the surface, a $2.5 billion Aegis destroyer is scanning the sky with its radar for hypersonic missiles, right beneath the oil tanker it's protecting, a $500 explosive charge has been attached. No bubbles, no sound. Not a single sophisticated sensor detects it. The logic of the world is simple. Send warships to escort, and that's it. But the physics and geometry of the Strait of Hormuz say otherwise. Today, we'll decipher why this mission is a problem with no solution, and why the sheer power of the US Navy has become its greatest burden. Why doesn't the United States, the planet's #1 naval power, simply send warships to escort each oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz? If you browse military forums or social media, the answer often sounds logical. Put an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer alongside each oil tanker. The problem is solved. In theory, an Aegis destroyer is an impenetrable fortress. It possesses a radar system capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously, from tiny speedboats to ballistic missiles hurtling down from the edge of the atmosphere. With 96 vertical missile launch tubes, it embodies absolute power. The idea of convoy escort sounds like a bulletproof solution. No gaps. But this is where the illusion begins to crack. Because in Hormuz, you're not just fighting the enemy. You're battling 3 even more formidable forces: physics, geometry, and time. Firepower can't change the surface area of water, nor can it bend the laws of radar wave propagation. Look at James. He's sitting in front of a multi-million-dollar radar screen. James believes what he sees. He believes the Aegis shield is invincible and that he can protect the massive oil tankers moving alongside him. James doesn't realize that his confidence in technology is blinding him to the most basic physical limitations. Why should James take the risk? Because this strait is the lifeblood of humanity. 20 million barrels of oil flow through it every day, 1/5 of global consumption. $1 billion worth of goods move through this bottleneck every 24 hours. If this lifeline is blocked for even a single day, the world's economic system will begin to crumble like dominoes. That pressure weighed heavily on James's shoulders, on his ship, and on a mission that, the deeper we delve into it, the more it seems impossible. James's radar screen had been blank just a second before. But now, a signal had appeared, and it wasn't hundreds of miles away. It was less than 20 seconds flight away. The first problem wasn't the warship, but what it was protecting. A VLCC, Vehicle-Launched Crude Tanker, is a 300,000-ton steel monster carrying 2 million barrels of crude oil. In this ship's vocabulary, the concept of maneuverability doesn't exist. It takes nautical miles to stop and minutes just to make a slight turn. Imagine driving a giant fuel tanker into a narrow alley. You can't dodge, you can't accelerate, and your hull, only about half an inch thick of commercial steel, is essentially a fragile shell against penetrating weapons. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 nautical miles wide, but the safe passage for these monsters is a mere 2 nautical miles wide. The ships had to travel in single file, one after another, like sheep being led to a slaughterhouse. To the left was the sheer cliffs of Iran. To the right, the rugged terrain of Oman. This was a perfect geometric trap. There was zero room for maneuver. Every ship in the convoy was locked onto a predetermined course, turning them into static targets on a giant firing board. James trusted his Aegis system, but he forgot a basic law of physics. Radar is microwave light, and it travels in a straight line. It cannot bend over mountaintops, nor can it see through limestone. The Zagros Mountains and islands like Keshem created radar shadows. The enemy could simply place mobile missile launchers behind the cliffs. The missiles would launch at sea-skimming altitude and only appear on James's screen once they had crossed the terrain boundary. Imagine the perfect scenario. James and the Aegis system intercepted every missile from the mountainside. The sky was clear of enemy activity. But just seconds later, a cataclysmic explosion still occurred, tearing apart the side of the oil tanker. Why? Because the killer never flew through the air. It was there, clinging to the steel beneath the seabed for a long time. This is a limpet mine. It doesn't need laser guidance, it doesn't need jet engines, and the cost of production is only the equivalent of a dinner in Washington. A special forces diver using a rebreather, a device that doesn't release air bubbles, can silently approach the slow-moving oil tanker in the narrow channel. In the murky and turbulent waters of the Hormuz, this diver becomes a physical ghost. He leaves no thermal signature for radar, no sound for sonar. He attaches the mine, activates the timer, and disappears into the current. The $500 weapon officially sealed the fate of the $100 million ship. Why could a small explosive charge sink a supertanker? The answer lies in the density of the environment. Water is 800 times denser than air and almost incompressible. When the mines detonate underwater, the energy isn't dispersed into space as it is on land. It's transmitted directly into the hull with almost zero loss. Even more terrifying is the bubble effect. After the initial explosion, a high-pressure bubble forms, expanding and contracting repeatedly. Each time it expands, it strikes the hull like a giant sledgehammer, shattering the steel frame designed to withstand static water pressure, not dynamic impact. The half-inch thin hull of the VLCC had no chance. Did James have sonar? Yes. But the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer's sonar is designed to search for submarines weighing thousands of tons, their engines roaring from miles away. It's not optimized for searching for an 80 kilograms human being drifting aimlessly in the water. In the shallow waters of the Hormuz, sonar waves are reflected chaotically from the limestone seabed and cliffs, creating a massive wall of interference. To James, that diver simply didn't exist. The most expensive system on the planet was officially blind to the cheapest threat on the battlefield. This is every strategist's ultimate nightmare. Multi-vector attack. A ballistic missile forcing the Aegis system to look extremely high. A cruise missile forcing the radar to filter interference close to the sea surface. And a mine already lying under the ship's hull. No defense system in the world, however modern, can perfectly handle all these variables simultaneously within a space of just 2 nautical miles. The problem with escorting troops in Hormuz wasn't a lack of firepower, but rather an overload of natural forces. All the physics and geometry analyses we've just discussed aren't just theoretical theories. They were written in blood and rusted steel on the 14th of April, 1988. This was the USS Samuel B. Roberts, a state-of-the-art escort ship at the time. It was doing exactly what James was doing, escorting Kuwaiti oil tankers through the death corridor during the Iran-Iraq War. That morning, the Samuel B. Roberts was on high alert. Radar was active, weapons were loaded, and all sensors were pointed skyward, searching for Iranian aircraft and missiles. They were confident in their armor and firepower. But then, an explosion ripped through the ocean. Not a missile, not an artillery barrage, it was an Iranian MO-8 torpedo, a World War I design costing less than $1,500. The underwater explosion created a 5-meter wide hole beneath the ship's hull, fracturing the keel and flooding the engine room. In an instant, the ship sent to protect the oil convoy had to rely on that very oil convoy to save its life. Put that scenario into James's reality. A convoy enters the strait. James's radar is blinded by the mountain silhouette of Keshem Island. Suddenly, a ballistic missile appears. James focuses the entire Aegis system to intercept the missile high above. He succeeds. But amidst the cheers of the CIC room, a second explosion erupts from the seabed. The magnetic mines had been laid an hour beforehand, or drifting torpedoes were already in place. This was the height of helplessness. You can intercept an incoming arrow, but you can't prevent the ground beneath your feet from exploding. After the Samuel B. Roberts disaster, the US Navy learned a bitter lesson that remains relevant 38 years later. The escort didn't fail because of a lack of warships, nor because the Aegis technology wasn't powerful enough. It failed because the definition of the mission was fundamentally flawed. Escorting an oil tanker in a confined space with the laws of physics working against you is a problem with no solution. You can't protect an undefended target inside a natural trap. In conventional warfare, concentrated firepower is strength. But at Hormuz, concentration was suicide. A VLCC nearly 400 meters long was nothing short of a mobile iron wall. When the Aegis destroyers approached to protect it, the tanker's massive hull created a huge electromagnetic fog. Let's do a simple calculation. To safely escort 20 million barrels of oil per day, the US would need to establish a continuous maritime conveyor belt. Each convoy would require at least 2 escort ships to cover both the surface and the seabed. With the journey, return, refueling, and maintenance, the US Navy would need to mobilize almost the entire 5th Fleet and part of the 7th Fleet just to be on standby in a 2-1 nautical mile strait. This is no longer a military mission, it's logistical suicide. An attacker wouldn't need to sink the entire US fleet. They only need to damage a single oil tanker at the narrowest point of the strait. Once that 300,000-ton vessel is stranded there, the Strait of Hormuz officially becomes a massive salvage operation. At this point, maritime insurance premiums would skyrocket by 500%, even 1,000% overnight. Escorts would then become pointless, because no shipping company would dare send a ship into a trap that's already been set. And finally, there's the psychological pressure. Imagine you're an officer on a billion-dollar destroyer, staring at a screen 24/7 to distinguish between a fisherman's canoe and a speedboat loaded with explosives hurtling towards you at 40 knots. The attacker only needs to be wrong 99 times, but you can only be wrong 0 times. In a space as narrow as the Hormuz, the initiative lies entirely in the hands of the opponent. You're playing a game where the price to pay is the collapse of the global energy market, while the opponent only loses a few wooden boats. The harsh truth emerges. Escorts are not the solution to the Hormuz problem. They are merely a desperate attempt to maintain an illusion of security. When physics, geography, and economics conspire against you, trying to send more ships into the strait only makes the trap more dangerous. It's just more expensive. It's time for America to face a harsher reality. If they can't defend themselves from the inside, they'll have to destroy the trap from the outside. If escorting was impossible, why didn't the United States withdraw? Why did James and thousands of other sailors still face this geometric trap every day? The answer lies in a vital shift in strategic thinking. America stopped trying to protect itself from within the trap. They shifted to planning to destroy it. The lesson from Samuel B. Roberts in 1988 wasn't just about a hole in the hull. The US response then wasn't to add more escort ships, but Operation Praying Mantis, a full-scale attack to destroy Iranian warships and military oil rigs. The US Navy's philosophy today is clear. You can't stand idly by and take blows next to a slow-moving oil tanker. The only way to protect the convoy is to completely eliminate the enemy's ability to strike. Remember this, you can't protect anything inside a natural trap like the Strait of Hormuz. The only way to ensure oil flows through here isn't by adding armor to ships, but by establishing a fire-free zone around them. This is why the Strait has always been the most volatile hotspot for war on the planet. There's no middle ground. Either you risk being destroyed by a diver with a $500 explosive charge, or a large-scale war to clear the entire strait. Oil has to flow. It's the gravity of the global economy. And because physics can't be changed, geography can't be moved, the choices of the great powers always lead to one path. If you were James, what would you choose? Continue waiting for an unforeseen explosion beneath your feet, or accept opening the door to a full-scale conflict to protect the world's lifeline. In the Strait of Hormuz, the issue has never been about strength, powerful firepower. The problem is, you're playing in a space where all the laws of nature are against you. And on that chessboard, the price of the smallest mistake can be the beginning of the greatest disaster. Thanks to my collaborators for deciphering this problem with the Navy Codex. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next strategic profiles. Wishing you victory.